The Law of One, Session 88, May 29, 1982.
88.0 I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now.
88.1 Questioner. Could you first please give me the condition of the instrument?
I am Ra. The physical complex energy deficit is considerable at this space/time. There has been also a significant loss of the vital energies. However, these energies are still well within the distortion you may call strength.
88.2 Questioner. Of all of the things that you have mentioned before for replenishing these energies, at this particular space/time, which would be most appropriate for the replenishing of both of these energies?
I am Ra. As you note, there are many factors which contribute to the aiding of the strength distortions and the amelioration of distortions towards weakness in this instrument. We suggest to each that those many things which have been learned be conscientiously applied. We would single out one physical distortion for discussion. The fourth density negative minions which visit your group at this time are energizing a somewhat severe complex of imbalances in the manual appendages of this instrument and, to a lesser extent, those distortions of the thoracic region. We suggest care be taken to refrain from any unnecessary use of these appendages. As this instrument will not appreciate this suggestion, we suggest the appropriate discussion.
88.3 Questioner. I assume from this that our fifth density negative companion is still on R and R. Is this correct?
I am Ra. Your fifth density companion is not accompanying you at this time. However, it is not resting.
88.4 Questioner. Is the sensor we have provided all right? They do go out prior to the end of the session. Would it be better if it did not go out prior to the end of the session?
I am Ra. The new configuration of the sensor is quite helpful to the more subtle patterns of energy surrounding these workings. It would be helpful to have a continuously burning amount of sense. However, the difficulty is in providing this without overpowering this enclosure with the amount of effluvium and physical product of combustion. Having to choose betwixt allowing the sensor to finish its burning and having an overabundance of the smoke, we would suggest the former as being more helpful.
88.5 Questioner. The instrument has mentioned what she refers to as bleed through or being aware, during these sessions sometimes, of the communication. Would you comment on this?
I am Ra. We have the mind/body/spirit complex of the instrument with us. As this entity begins to awaken from the metaphorical crib of experiencing light and activity in our density, it is beginning to be aware of the movement of thought. It does not grasp these thoughts any more than your third density infant may grasp the first words it perceives. The experience should be expected to continue and is an appropriate outgrowth of the nature of these workings and of the method by which this instrument has made itself available to our words.
88.6 Questioner. The instrument mentioned a recurrence of the need for going to the bathroom prior to this session. Is this because of the low vital energy?
I am Ra. It is part of the cause of the lowered vital energy level. This entity has been sustaining a level of the distortion you call pain which few among your peoples experience without significant draining of the energies. Indeed, the stability of the entity is notable. However, the entity has thusly become drained and further has felt other distortions such as those for a variety of experiences accentuated, for this is one means of balancing the inward-looking experience of the physical pain. Due to concern for this entity, such activities have been discouraged. This has further drained the entity. The will to be of service to the Creator through the means of offering itself as instrument in these workings, therefore, was given an opportunity for the testing of resolve. This entity used some vital energy to fuel and replenish the will. No physical energy has been used by the instrument, but the vital energies were tapped so that this entity might have the opportunity to once again consciously choose to serve the one infinite Creator.
88.7 Questioner. Is the small crystal that the instrument uses upon her during the session of any benefit or detriment?
I am Ra. This crystal is beneficial as long as he who has charged it is functioning in a positively oriented manner.
88.8 Questioner. Who charged the crystal?
I am Ra. This crystal was charged for use by this instrument by the one known as Neil.
88.9 Questioner. It would be an abridgment of the first distortion to tell us whether he is still functioning in a positive manner, would it not?
I am Ra. We perceive you have replied to your own query.
88.10 Questioner. Our publisher requests pictures for the book, The Law of One, that is going to press at this time. Would you comment on the advisability, benefit, or detriment, magical or otherwise, of us using pictures of this particular setup, the instrument, and the appurtenances in the book?
I am Ra. The practical advisability of such a project is completely a product of your discrimination. There are magical considerations. Firstly, if pictures be taken of a working, the visual image must needs be that which is. That is, it is well for you to photograph only an actual working and no sham nor substitution of any material. There shall be no distortions, which this group can avoid any more than we would wish distortions in our words. Secondly, it is inadvisable to photograph the instrument or any portion of the working room while the instrument is in trance. This is a narrowband contact, and we wish to keep electrical and electromagnetic energies constant when their presence is necessary and not present at all otherwise.
88.11 Questioner. I'm sorry. Go ahead. If you meant to continue, continue. If not, I'll ask the question.
I am Ra. We wish to state, thirdly, that once the instrument is aware that the picture taking will be performed, that during the entire picture taking, whether before or after the working, the instrument be required to continuously respond to speech, thus assuring that no trance is imminent.
88.12 Questioner. From what you have told me, then, I have planned the following. We will, after a session is complete and the instrument has been awakened, before moving the instrument, have the instrument continually talk to us while I take pictures of the configuration the instrument is in at this time. In addition to this, I will take some other pictures of the instrument in the other room, and probably ourselves, too, just for additional pictures of us as requested by the publisher. Is this the optimal, or one of the optimal, fillings of this requirement?
I am Ra. Yes. We ask that any photographs tell the truth, that they be dated, and shine with a clarity so that there is no shadow of any but genuine expression which may be offered to those which seek truth. We come as humble messengers of the law of one, desiring to decrease distortions. We ask that you, who have been our friends, work with any considerations such as above discussed, not with the thought of quickly removing an unimportant detail, but, as in all ways, regard such as another opportunity to, as the adept must, be yourselves and offer that which is in and with you without pretense of any kind.
88.13 Questioner. Thank you. I would like to ask you as to the initial production of the tarot, where this concept was first formed and where the tarot was first recorded. Where did the very first concept?
I am Ra. The concept of the tarot originated within the planetary influence you call Venus.
88.14 Questioner. Was the concept given to, let me ask you, say it originated there? Was this concept devised for a training tool for those inhabiting Venus at that time, or was it devised by those of Venus as a training tool for those of Earth?
I am Ra. The tarot was devised by the third density population of Venus, a great measure of your space/time in your past. As we have noted, the third density experience of those of Venus dealt far more deeply and harmoniously with what you would call relationships with other selves, sexual energy transfer work, and philosophical or metaphysical research. The product of many generations of work upon what we conceive to be the archetypical mind produced the tarot, which was used by our peoples as a training aid in developing the magical personality.
88.15 Questioner. I'll make a guess that those of Venus third density, who were the initial ones to partially penetrate the veil, will glean information as to the nature of the archetypical mind and the veiling process, and from this design the tarot as a method of teaching others. Is this correct?
I am Ra. It is so.
88.16 Questioner. I will also assume, which may not be correct, that the present list that I have of the 22 names of the tarot cards are not in exact agreement with Ra's original generation of the tarot. Could you describe the original tarot? First telling me there were 22 archetypes that must have been the same, and if they were the same as the list that I have read you in a previous session, or if there were differences?
I am Ra. As we have stated previously, each archetype is a concept complex and may be viewed not only by individuals but by those of the same racial and planetary influences in unique ways. Therefore, It is not informative to reconstruct the rather minor differences in descriptive terms between the tarot used by us and that used by those of Egypt and the spiritual descendants of those first students of this system of study. The one great breakthrough which was made after our work in third density was done was the proper emphasis given to the arcanum number 22, which we have called the choice. In our own experience we were aware that such an unifying archetype existed but did not give that archetype the proper complex of concepts in order to most efficaciously use that archetype in order to promote our evolution.
88.17 Questioner. I will make this statement as to my understanding of some of the archetypes, and let you correct this statement. It seems to me that the significator of mind, body, and spirit are acted upon in each of these by the catalyst. This produces experience, which then leads to the transformation and produces the great way. This is the same process for mind, the body, and spirit. The archetypes are just repeated, but act in a different way as catalyst because of the differences of mind, body, and spirit. They produce a different type of experience for each because of the differences in the three. The transformation is slightly different. The great way is somewhat different. But the archetypes are all basically doing the same thing. They are just acting on three different portions of the mind/body/spirit complex, so that we can condense the entire archetypical mind into a way of saying that in making the significator a complex, basically, we have provided a way for catalysts to create transformation more efficiently. Would you correct my statement, please?
I am Ra. In your statement, correctness is so plated up with tendrils of the most fundamental misunderstanding that correction of your statement is difficult. We shall make comments, and from these comments request that you allow a possible realignment of conceptualization to occur. The archetypical mind is a great and fundamental portion of the mind complex, one of its most basic elements and one of the richest sources of information for the seeker of the one infinite creator. To attempt to condense the archetypes is to make an erroneous attempt. Each archetype is a significant ding and sitch, or thing in itself, with its own complex of concepts. While it is informative to survey the relationships of one archetype to another, it can be said that this line of inquiry is secondary to the discovery of the purest gestalt or vision or melody which each archetype signifies to both the intellectual and intuitive mind. The significators of mind, body, and spirit complexes are complex in and of themselves, and the archetypes of catalyst, experience, transformation, and the great way are most fruitfully viewed as independent complexes which have their own melodies with which they may inform the mind of its nature. We ask that you consider that the archetypical mind informs those thoughts which then may have bearing upon the mind, the body, or the spirit. The archetypes do not have a direct linkage to body or spirit. All must be drawn up through the higher levels of the subconscious mind to the conscious mind, and thence they may flee whither they have been bidden to go. When used in a controlled way, they are most helpful. Rather than continue beyond the boundaries of your prior statement, we would appreciate the opportunity for your re-questioning at this time so that we may answer you more precisely.
88.18 Questioner. I will ask the following questions to clear up possibly only the method of teaching these concepts, which may give me important clues to understanding the concepts themselves. Did Dro use cards similar to the tarot cards for the training purpose in third density?
I am Ra. No.
88.19 Questioner. What did Dro use in third density?
I am Ra. You are aware in your attempts at magical visualization of the mental configuration of sometimes rather complex visualizations. These are mental and drawn with the mind. Another example well known in your culture is the visualization, in your mass, of the distortion of the love of the one infinite creator called Christianity, wherein a small portion of your foodstuffs is seen to be a mentally configured but entirely real man, the man known to you as Jehoshua, or, as you call this entity now, Jesus. It was by this method of sustained visualization over a period of training that we worked with these concepts. These concepts were occasionally drawn. However, the concept of one visualization per card was not thought of by us.
88.20 Questioner. Well, how did the teacher relay information to the student with respect to visualization?
I am Ra. The process was Kabbalistic, that is, of the oral tradition of mouth to ear.
88.21 Questioner. Then, when Ra attempted to teach the Egyptians the concept of the tarot, was the same process used, or a different one?
I am Ra. The same process was used. However, those which were teach/learners after us first drew these images to the best of their ability within the place of initiation and later began the use of what you call cards bearing these visualizations representations.
88.22 Questioner. Were the court arcana and the minor arcana a portion of Ra's teachings? Or was this something that came along later?
I am Ra. Those cards of which you speak were the product of the influence of those of Chaldea and Sumer.
88.23 Questioner. You mentioned earlier that the tarot was a method of divination. Would you explain that?
I am Ra. We must first divorce the tarot as a method of divination from this major arcana as representative of 22 archetypes of the archetypical mind. The value of that which you call astrology is significant when used by those initiated entities which understand, if you will pardon the misnomer, the sometimes intricate considerations of the law of confusion. As each planetary influence enters the energy web of your sphere, those upon the sphere are moved much as the moon which moves about your sphere moves the waters upon your deeps. Your own nature is water in that you as mind/body/spirit complexes are easily impressed and moved. Indeed, this is the very fiber and nature of your journey and vigil in this density, to not only be moved but to instruct yourself as to the preferred manner of your movement in mind, body, and spirit. Therefore, as each entity enters the planetary energy web, each entity experiences two major planetary influxes, that of the conception, which has to do with the physical, yellow ray manifestation of the incarnation, and that of the moment you call birth, when the breath is first drawn into the body complex of chemical yellow ray. Thus those who know the stars and their configurations and influences are able to see a rather broadly drawn map of the country through which an entity has traveled, is traveling, or may be expected to travel, be it upon the physical, the mental, or the spiritual level. Such an entity will have developed abilities of the initiate which are normally known among your peoples as psychic or paranormal. When the archetypes are shuffled into the mix of astrologically oriented cards which form the so-called court arcana and minor arcana, these archetypes become magnetized to the psychic impressions of the one working with the cards, and thusly become instruments of a linkage between the practitioner of the astrological determinations and divinations and the one requesting information. Ofttimes such archetypical representations will appear in such a manner as to have seemingly interesting results, meaningful in configuration to the questioner. In and of themselves, the major arcana have no rightful place in divination but, rather, are tools for the further knowledge of the self by the self for the purpose of entering a more profoundly, acutely realized present moment.
88.24 Questioner. Room must have had a, shall we say, lesson plan or course of training for the 22 archetypes to be given either to those of third density of Ra or, later on, to those in Egypt. Would you describe this scenario for the training course?
I am Ra. This shall be the last full query of this working. We find it more nearly appropriate to discuss our plans in acquainting initiates upon your own planet with this particular version of the archetypes of the archetypical mind. Our first stage was the presentation of the images, one after the other, in the following order: 1, 8, 15, 2, 9, 16, 3, 10, 17, 4, 11, 18, 5, 12, 19, 6, 13, 20, 7, 14, 21, 22. In this way the fundamental relationships between mind, body, and spirit could begin to be discovered, for as one sees, for instance, the matrix of the mind in comparison to the matrices of body and spirit, one may draw certain tentative conclusions. When, at length, the student had mastered these visualizations and had considered each of the 7 classifications of archetype, looking at the relationships between mind, body, and spirit, we then suggested consideration of archetypes in pairs, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6 and 7. You may continue in this form for the body and spirit archetypes. You will note that the consideration of the significator was left unpaired, for the significator shall be paired with archetype 22. At the end of this line of inquiry, the student was beginning to grasp more and more deeply the qualities and resonances of each archetype. At this point, using various other aids to spiritual evolution, we encouraged the initiate to learn to become each archetype and, most importantly, to know as best as possible within your illusion when the adoption of the archetype's persona would be spiritually or metaphysically helpful. As you can see, much work was done creatively by each initiate. We have no dogma to offer. Each perceives that which is needful and helpful to the self. May we ask if there are any brief queries before we leave this working?
88.25 Questioner. Is there anything that we can do to improve the contact or make the instrument more comfortable?
I am Ra. We again warned you concerning the distortions of the instrument's hands. The fourth density influence upon them could be inconvenient in that, if allowed to proceed without abatement, what you call your surgery shall be almost immediately necessary. The alignments are good. You have been fastidious. We leave you, my friends, in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing merrily in the power and in the glorious peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.